Yeah, I do.
Good evening, everybody. Episode number 43 of Craig and Joey's Sinister Mysteries. I'm Craig, and
I'm Craig. You're Joey.
oh, that's right. Goodness gracious! Whoa, I wish that I was Craig. All right, now we know it.
Bizarro
Okay,
world.
now the truth
He's
has come
Craig. I'm
out.
Joey. How are you?
I wish I was Craig because he has a much better beard than I do, and I actually put him in. Well, heck, I'll announce it tonight. I am writing a companion novel for the Mothman 66 Escape Room, which is, oh man, is successful beyond. I'm so excited. All 5-star reviews. People are loving it. The puzzles are just anyway. I'm over the moon as a designer, as only designers can be when their design doesn't suck. So, which is a very good thing. But I'm also sporting my new Fringe T-shirt. And Craig, if you'll notice, Department of Homeland Security. So this is the good guy fringe, because I've been wearing this hat for years, and online all you can get is Department of Defense, and that's the bad guy fringe team.
Yeah, so that's the other side. Yep.
Yeah, so the good guy side, and now I got a Department of Homeland Security T-shirt. But I have to say, I have a little housekeeping to do, which I told Craig, some exciting stuff for contributors or guests of the show or whatnot. I'm not sure why I just went dark. That was weird.
I know.
But anyway, I have really, looking at Ted Kaczynski, looking at the Unabomber, and watching Fringe, Craig, there's just so, like, it's the overlaps, the parallels, the messaging are very, very similar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's at least one sinister aspect, right? Which I stumbled upon Tuesday about this whole thing. So let me get the housekeeping out of the way. We're going to run the opening. Craig and I are working on something really special, probably for about maybe before, but around our 50th episode. We're working on something that we want to get just right, just perfect. The show deserves it. Our audience deserves it. We're really excited about it. But I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. Barbara DeLong, friend of the show, and made appearances on Three Beards as well. So part of the whole family. Cosmic Deck of Initiation is now on an app called Deckable. So go to Deckable. It's $20. Tanya will tell you. Hopefully she'll drop some mini review in the chat room tonight. But she absolutely loves it. I love the actual cards. They're just wonderful. Other thing, friend of the show, longtime viewer, Jessica Knuckles' debut novel out, The Rhododendron Society. Awesome book about a coven of witches in a small town in West Virginia. It's very cool. And Jessica is going to be on the show September 26th. I'm excited. Nice. I'm trying to mix it up on Craig's off weeks, and I'm going to do a couple solo shows coming up about 1947, UFOs, and major changes to the government. So things that I've talked about small, I get to devote a whole hour to. 1947 and UFOs, not just Roswell. I'm going to have another author on, Mike Cobb, who did a cool historical novel early October, and Craig and I are going to keep pushing with all this stuff. So I'm going to roll the opening real quick because it's just something we do, and I think it helps the radio folks to do it. Craig, when can you listen to the show on Earth Radio?
At 10 o'clock Eastern time on Wednesdays.
There you go. All of a sudden he is German to promote the show. Welcome to the show.
That's right.
What the heck? Why is it not? Oh,
I know. I do this all the time.
Button. There we go. There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon. The preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts, because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, the couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey into the outer realms.
Yes. We're
Yeah.
live. It's this stuff happens. We're a live show. We're not taped
it was all
before a
good.
studio audience. We're all live.
It was good. That German accent totally threw me.
I know. I
But we
apologize.
went with it, and it was fun. JG, you're absolutely right. He carved a poop hole, no electricity, no running water in his cabin in Montana. Ted Kaczynski, when he committed, which makes him similar to the guys, the Randy Weaver and David Koresh, but yet very different. Because his isolationism was true isolation. It began, Craig, you and I talked about it. You want to make any opening remarks before I kind of go through the bio?
Just for people, like I said, you can notice the threads that we tie into these things. This has a very common thread in the word. It's MK Ultra.
Yeah, right,
And this,
brother.
and this is one of those things. For me, as we get into this, it's like I'll kind of chime in here. It makes me wonder how many of these people are still out there and just haven't made themselves known.
Right.
And it's kind of like my little, teaser thing is, in a way, I wonder if some of these people are spun and they're just waiting out there to be triggered. Like they're waiting for the trigger to be pulled.
Well, that's the sinister for me of this.
Mhm.
There's two things. One has to do with how the FBI handled the case. And maybe not sinister, maybe simply stupidity or boundary, or disagreements about who is going to do what. There's that. But there's the thing. So let's jump in on this. There's another thing that I want everybody to keep in mind. I'm not going to speak for Craig. I'm only going to speak for me. What really strikes me about the Ted Kaczynskis and the Max Ponzis who immolated himself outside of Trump's trial several months ago. I've read these guys' manifestos, and I agree with almost everything that they say. I do the show. I'm a busy guy. I could be doing a lot of other things. I'm highly, highly committed to this work. It's all through my novels. I speak about it more and more on radio and other places outside of our show, Craig. But I'm not setting myself on fire. And I'm not sending mail bombs. And it really, I let's leave it at that. But folks, keep that in mind. And those of you who are activists as well.
Because the only other thing I would add into that, where you said, is because you're gonna hear the name Henry Murray, through this discussion.
Sure are.
And it's kind of it was back to when we talked about the Japanese experiments in that episode.
731.
Yeah, this is that same thing where when we're talking about this, like for people think, what is your definition of too far?
Yeah,
because it's one of those things. Because when you look at the face value of this guy coming in here, you're going to see it's like, well, he probably ground broke some actual stuff that actually helps people, but at what cost? That's always been it. What cost is too much for what we have now? So,
Right. So that is a lot of teasing. And why is this a sinister mystery? Here's why. Ted or Theodore John Kaczynski, right? Because when you're a domestic terrorist or a serial killer or any of those kind of guys, to differentiate between you and other people who may have the same name, so use the full name, Theodore John or Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. And Craig, this was a long time ago. So this 17 years was between my high school, college, and into my early 20s, where there was a lot going on. I thought Unabomber was Unibomber, and it was because he acted alone. So that's not true. So I don't know. Let us know in the chat room, please. It helps us too with our algorithms and all of that kind of thing. JG, we're gonna get around to what the government role and education system and all.
Yeah,
Really
'cause I
did for
didn't
Ted Kaczynski.
Yeah, I didn't know that part either. Because I always thought it was just, like you said, Unabomber was single, it was a single
Yeah.
guy. I didn't realize that that was the acronym.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
he was born May 22nd, 1942, just to put it in context, 2 years before my dad. He was born in Chicago, Illinois, to Polish immigrant parents. When he was 9 months old, he suffered extreme hives, which put him in the hospital for long periods of time by himself. And this developed a pattern of isolation for Ted Kaczynski. So, like an FBI profiler, like Tanya and I did for years when we were doing field investigations in the paranormal and so forth, these kinds of things are important. You need to put together a profile of these people. And Craig and I have done plenty of this on the show, really focusing on these details, especially early on, what shapes us as people. His parents said that when he went through that phase, he was never the happy, content child ever again. Now, add on top of this that he was highly, highly adept at chemistry. So he was making small explosive, according to a childhood friend, by the time he was 12 years old. So
Mhm.
this fascination for him, he was a little bit of the Dexter, the child genius. And as a matter of fact, his IQ was 167, definitely genius range, and had a real aptitude for mathematics. So he skips the 6th grade. And Craig, I've heard this before, out with sort of people who are well known and also people that I've known. Skipping a grade in middle school or skipping 5th grade and going to 6th grade, skipping 7th, 8th grade, going right to high school. This is often difficult for kids.
Oh, yes.
They're so much younger and kids take advantage of them. And let's be honest, whether it's girls who are really smart or geniuses or people, I've been called a hyper intellectual, and that is not a compliment. It's an insult because people are threatened by people who come across as too educated or too smart. Plus, when you have a 167 IQ, look at Tesla, right? At the end
Yeah.
of his life, he was courting a pigeon.
Yeah. I've always, I don't know if I've ever said this. For me, I've always thought like some of these people like Einstein, Tesla, they were able to tap into the Akashic record.
Yeah.
And I think as it goes, because it just, some people can handle it better. Other ones, if they go too far, they kind of start to go crazy.
Yeah.
And that's where I think Tesla, Tesla just ended up tapping into it too much. And that's why he suddenly fell in love with a pigeon. His mind was just.
Yep. If you've ever seen A Beautiful Mind, that only just scratches the surface about Princeton mathematician John Graham Nash. The book that it's based on, A Beautiful Mind, is a tome. It's heavy reading, but it's well worth reading. Ron Howard really had to leave a lot of stuff out. So we're painting a picture here. He was active in high school. He wasn't the isolationist. He was in clubs. He was in the marching band. I think he played trombone, but he was also known as the walking brain. And so
My German accent was foreshadowing.
Judged him. What's that, sir?
No, I said my German accent was a foreshadowing for what you just said.
Yeah.
He was part of a German club.
That's right. Yes. And Latin. I mean, the guy was smart. He was a polymath. Exactly. So math and science groups who were known as the Briefcase Boys, which makes me think of the Bookhouse Boys in Twin Peaks. So all of these, for lack of a better word, science nerds, geeks, so on and so forth, we were all in high school. We all had our cliques. Mine was in the art wing, the creative arts wing. And when I stepped out of that wing, always took my share of abuse in phys ed, things like that. So he enrolls in Harvard. He graduates high school early, and he enrolls in Harvard at age 16. This is in 1958. And as you know, Craig and I, our very first show, 43 shows ago, was MK Ultra. I've talked about it a lot. Craig knows a hell of a lot about MK Ultra, and we've learned as we've done Monarch and we've done Kissinger and we've done all of these things. MK Ultra pops up everywhere, dudes. If those of you new to the show or just don't know or don't remember, MK Ultra is mind control. be it for assassins, its experiments with nerve gases and with LSD, Sidney Gottlieb and the CIA. CIA is very much in the middle of all this kind of crap. Well, here comes the sinister. Get ready for this. He is part of an experiment that went on for 3 years. He was involved in 200 hours of it. Here's how the experiment worked. And Craig, if I don't get it right, please course correct me.
All right.
You were asked to write, and he's there. He's 16, 17 years old. Keep this in mind as well. An isolated kid who's been made fun of. They're asked to write an essay about their philosophical beliefs, about how the world works, their zeitgeist, or their worldview, the gestalt, all that kind of stuff. That essay is then weaponized against them. And Tanya, you and I watched a documentary about a group in California who would take these high school kids, so some of them Ted Kaczynski's age, and also rehab drug addicts and things like that, by insulting them. So this was a thing in the late 50s, early 60s. So he took 200 hours of extreme verbal and emotional abuse by psychology professors, Harvard psychology professors, under the direction, like Craig said, of director Henry Murray, who was former OSS, Office of Strategic Services, which became the CIA.
Yep.
What did this do? And why the hell? They say that they were studying stress responses. So you're going to take a 17-year-old math prodigy, 18-year-old math prodigy away from home, a kid who's socially isolated, already a little weird, and you're going to subject him to 200 hours of extreme verbal and emotional abuse. Craig, we know from Artichoke and all that, it's called psychic driving.
Yeah, I mean, think Ghostbusters in the scene, when Venkman, he's got the girl that he's flirting with, and he's got the guy that he keeps intentionally shocking just because that's basically, that's kind of like a humorous version of what kind of this stuff was, is because what these did is they had these participants write down intimate, things like you personally believe in. Like, I mean, we'll just use religion. Say you have a deep religious belief in Jesus Christ, and that's, you go through things. They have you write this down, and then they tear it completely down. I mean, they basically mercilessly destroy. I mean, it's like, think boot camp. I mean, they basically break you down over these things, to the point of they want you to rage. They want you to do these things because that's the psychological thing. They want to see where people's breaking points are.
Yeah.
Once again, like I said in the beginning, where does it, they learn valuable information through the CIA, for the government, on what is considered a breaking point. Like, when would people break under pressure? So yes, you're finding valuable information on how, on the psychological side, but at what cost is it unacceptable?
Right. And all in the name of national security. We've been over this. All roads lead from MK Ultra. That's why we began with it, this journey 43 episodes ago. So he goes on to earn his master's and PhD in math from University of Michigan. Remember, University of Michigan, folks. It was his third choice. He really wanted to go to UC Berkeley. Also remember the name UC Berkeley, but they offered no aid or teaching position. So he winds up at Michigan. He was always critical of the education that he got there, the politics, feeling isolated, feeling ostracized. During this time, and Craig, I hope that you found this too. It was in a limited number of resources, but they were solid. He had some sexual difficulties and different sexual perceptions, and actually had an appointment with a psychiatrist to talk about gender transition, and he backed out of that appointment. He left the office and he kind of let it drop. But that's another.
I missed that. I missed that part.
It is not out there. I think it was in the Washington Post. It was in something that was credible enough that I put it in there. So this is while he's in graduate school. So he is at this point, he's not only 167 genius, but he's working on problems that one professor said probably only 10 people in the country, if not the world, even understand what the hell this guy is talking about. I mean, this is genius stuff.
Mhm.
He not only finishes and defends his dissertation to earn his PhD at I think like 25, 26 years old. But it won the award for Best Mass Dissertation at all of UMass Mich, which is a big school. So they're pumping out a lot of those kind of things. And he was unusually driven, as these people are. He's pursuing big, complex questions. So he gets a job as an assistant professor, youngest ever at University of California, Berkeley, where he couldn't attend because he couldn't afford it. Okay. He suddenly resigns after 2 years because he's so deep in his head, because he has so much social isolationism. We have to keep it on the table, I think, Craig, that maybe he was somewhat broken by those 200 hours of severe abuse. He resigns and he goes home to Chicago to live with his parents for 2 years. And his students didn't like him. They couldn't relate to him. He taught from the textbook. He wasn't able to answer questions. And this is the big thing about college professors. Some are very good teachers. Some are very good researchers. And if you're slotted in the wrong position, you can make a real hash job of your career.
Oh yeah. Anybody that's at college. I mean, I had one math teacher where he did things. I mean, I clicked, and then other teachers, there's just like, I couldn't even connect to. And it's one of those things. I think a lot of people that, I could even use myself personally as an example. It's like there's some things where it's so ingrained to me, it seems natural. I have to remind myself, just because it comes comes naturally to me, doesn't mean everybody else comes natural. Because even like mathematics, I can do stuff in my head, like math, the multiplication table is like instant. I know the answer. And so when somebody else looks at them, I just kind of look at them like, what's the matter with you? Why can't you figure this out? And I have to remind myself, not everybody can do this.
Right.
This is something, And so I think that was his thing. You're right. He was broken, and he had that ability. He was so above other people. Like those people are going to be really hard to teach because the basics are going to be like, why don't you know this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
And I'm a very good teacher, and I've been doing it for a very long time. I had a really hard time helping my kids with their homework in areas where I knew the information, but I was not skilled in teaching that information.
Yeah.
So I would try to help them get where they needed to go, but my clues, right? I designed escape rooms. So when you ask the game master for one of your 3 clues, it has to be a really good answer. It has to be useful. That's the rules of the game. So I'm really on game master. So yeah. So he comes to the point where he says, there is no place for me in this world. So he gets some acreage near Lincoln, Montana, remote cabin that he builds himself, the whole bit. But let's keep in mind that a genius person like Carl Jung built a stone tower by himself in an isolated place where he spent a lot of time. I myself will go out into the woods for hours. When I was in college, Craig, I would have to get on my bike and ride 40, 50 miles in a day, 2 or 3 times a week, or go walk in the woods like a mile and a half from the school just to get away from people. So I kind of understand a little bit of this. It's all degrees. He becomes an environmental activist. He is a Luddite at this point, anti-technology, thinks it's bad, distrusts it. This is a time when technology is really ratcheting up. So it's a huge conversation. We're right in the smack of the atomic age, which is a very thorny. Anybody who watched Oppenheimer, these are not easy questions. What we do with this knowledge. To further compound this, so it's a series of unfortunate events, right? Ted Kaczynski, Lemony Snicket. They deforest all around his cabin. So industry, technology, deforestation are creeping in. The freaking guy has no electric, no running water, cuts a hole in the floor to go to the bathroom, like JG said, and they encroach on him. They deforest. And I will tell you all, go
Yeah,
ahead,
and
Craig.
I wonder if part of that was because the property he bought was a ranch. It was right off the owner of that ranch routinely would sell off little pieces to
Mm-hmm.
pay for things.
Yes.
And so he basically was next to a working ranch. And so I think that probably the logging that happened was used for income for the ranch. So it wasn't that this was just simply, massive timber company coming in, just
Yeah.
clearing land. I think it was one of those intentional. But when you're at this point, any actions done anywhere near your vicinity is, it escalates, as we can
Yeah.
see from this guy. What
Right.
is about to occur is that
Right.
it just, all it took was a little nudge.
Yeah. And again, I'm bringing it back to me because what is that line where you cross that line, even though you have the same feelings? The people next door to us, the father, I think, bought the house for his daughter who was going through, a change in her life, a transition. I'm assuming all of this. And the guy loves to cut down all the trees and stuff between our two properties. And it drives me crazy. So I've had to let my stuff grow up bigger and bushier and more out of control just to regain our privacy. Because I don't want to be looking into their yard or vice versa. So I kind of get this kind of stuff. A lot going on in the MK Ultra, right? We talked about that. We're going to talk about it more. Charles, I'm going to leave your comment up here about Jacques Ellul because that comes into play pretty soon. So he's reading voraciously. He's out in the woods. He's reading. I'm a voracious reader. You're taking in all this stuff, technological society and propaganda. Even think about, Craig, The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings and all of that. That's Tolkien's warning against mechanized warfare and over-industrialization. Some people dispute that, but I'm going to stand by it being a major in English and in college. I think there's enough evidence to support that. He's reading classics in their individual language. One place that he does go is down to the library. So, let's Charles, I'm going to take yours down and I'm going to put King's up here. Seems to me he was pushed to do something like Michael Douglas in the movie Falling Down, and at the end it was nothing more than a government experiment. There's no way for us to know. He did not mention it in his manifesto. He did not mention it after the fact. But we do have this Harvard experiment with Henry Murray, OSS becomes the CIA, MK Ultra. And we know, Craig, Carleton University in Canada, Edgewood Arsenal, the prison in Philadelphia. It goes on and on. Stanford University prison experiment is very similar. So those guys were trading notes? Probably. And this is all the military in the name of national security. So was something implanted? Was something inadvertently implanted? Why did it take from 1958 to 1978, almost 20 years before he now goes into action? Now, Craig, you and I don't talk about this stuff before the show. We're not even at a half hour
intentionally
through. There are 16 bombs that he sent or personally delivered. Do we go through all of them? I mean, it's only a couple sentences for each one.
We can. I mean, I've got the list handy too, but it's one of those. I mean, we can, because I think if I remember right too, the FBI found a device in the cabin too. So that was unexploded. Unexploded.
That I did not see.
Yeah, that was one. I believe the FBI did find one that was.
Okay, because that's important, because when they published the manifesto, they defended that publishing, giving this guy a stage, but they said there were no more bombings, and within 7 months we caught him. So the
Yeah.
fact that there was still a bomb in the cabin, not knowing how old
Yeah,
that bomb was,
I'll
or
double check that. Like I said, because it's
okay.
yeah, but I believe that they did find one in the cabin.
And they had to find parts and pieces to match up,
Mhm.
not just the word of the brother, but we're getting a little ahead. So the first one was at Northwestern University. So he starts targeting. Now, this is close to home. This is close to Chicago. It's May 25th, 1978. And then a year later, May 9th, 1979, Northwestern University, Evansville, Illinois. Package bomb in the parking lot. Man named Terry Marker, campus security officer, injured opening it. This is an innocent person. Now, I think there are degrees of innocent. Ted Kaczynski did not know personally any of his targets, but his ultimate targets were professors or computer store owners or advertising executives who were contributing to the problem as he saw it. But this campus security guard is like the guards that were murdered at the Bastille when it was stormed. Innocent.
Yeah.
There are different
So-
levels of innocent.
And I found, so this is from the FBI's own thing. April 3rd, 1996, when they combed the cabin, they found a bunch of bomb components. They found 40,000 page, journal things, and they descriptions of his things, including one live bomb that was ready to be mailed.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so they did find
brother.
they did find a live.
Yeah, that's why we make a good team. So he was ready to strike again. That second one, a year later, almost to the day, was graduate student John Harris. In many of these cases, not to downplay it, the bomb was powerful enough to blind an eye, loss of 3 or 4 fingers. I didn't necessarily see, well, towards the end, Craig, they got more powerful and more sinister. So Shadow, there's another use of the word sinister. The bombs themselves. Now, he hand delivered that, and then he stayed in Chicago throughout that year with his father and his brother, and he was working at a factory. Interesting data point, his own brother had to fire him from the factory because he was writing suggestive limericks about a female supervisor that he was courting. So Ted is not right. Now there's sexual dysfunction that's acting out, inappropriate behavior with people. So this history with his brother, you just let me know when you want me to put that on.
Yeah, you can put it up there. That's one of the devices. So when you're describing it,
okay.
So we can show people it's not sophisticated. There's not C4. There's not a lot of things. What you have is a rudimentary explosive, pipe bomb. But if you notice on the outside of the package, there's a bunch of nails. And that's what, if people, you can zoom in. I'll zoom in a little bit here for people to, hopefully see. But all these are nails that are along in the cardboard. So when this explodes, those nails get shot out. And so that's where a lot of the damage came from when people is from the shrapnel. Right. It wasn't from the actual blast.
Right. And that shrapnel gets more intense and more complicated as he goes. So now he does something which thankfully became out of character for him, and he regretted it. He targets American Airlines Flight 444. This is on November 15, 1979, Chicago to D.C. Bomb is placed in the cargo hold, fails to fully detonate. Again, he's, with his family, so this is something that he does, but it does cause a fire in the hold, and they have to make an emergency landing. People are treated for smoke inhalation. As I said, he later regretted that. I believe it was part of the manifesto where he said indiscriminate targets, no good. But this is a game that he's playing, Craig, when he delivers a bomb, mails it or otherwise, secretaries. He doesn't always target. And to say some secretary working for an engineering professor, that's collateral damage.
Yeah, it's kind of like the ones when they send ricin and anthrax and stuff. When these people send these things to things, usually it's the mailroom clerk or the secretary or some assistant that usually opens it up and causes thing when the intended target was the president of the company, somebody like that. Right. But the underlings are usually the ones that intercept and are, like in that case, like you said, collateral damage when they weren't the initial target.
Right. And they're all collateral damage. So
Mhm.
King says the knowledge of making more powerful bombs, was this a higher power like a black government? It could have just been his increasing frustration and self-indoctrination.
Mhm.
There are times when I have to walk away from the research that I'm doing because it's making me depressed or it's making me angry. That doesn't serve me as a researcher, a presenter, an educator, an author to be angry or depressed. I need to get the information out there and do it. So we don't know. It could be. The fact is, we don't know because he never said. And he handled his trial and the aftermath of his trial in a very, very specific way. At this time, FBI classifies him, the unsub, right, the unknown subject, as
Mhm.
the Unabomb, UNABOM, University and Airline Bomber. So the media take it and make it the Unabomber. There. Now,
Yeah, that's how the
next,
Unabomber name came out. Yeah.
yeah, he stays with the airlines and he targets the president of United Airlines, Percy Wood, in Illinois. So again, sticking close to home. This is 80, June of 80. Fundamental mistake to stick too close to home. Just a freebie for you guys as a guy who writes a lot of novels. And he hides it in a book. And where is Charles' comment? Because the book that he hides it in is this book, Technological Society and Propaganda. So as time goes on, like some serial killers, the Zodiac, for instance, who after the fact they took a hard look at Kaczynski as maybe being the Zodiac killer because clues, misdirections, long letters, manifestos,
Mhm.
wanting to get a message out through the paper. He was not the Zodiac killer, by the way. Severe hand and facial industries again. Now, Craig, if I may, this is where the FBI fucks up.
Yeah.
FBI celebrity profiler John Douglas, and I have a whole shelf of his books here in Criminal
Mhm.
Minds and Mindhunter. All those television shows are all based on the work of John Douglas and the behavioral science unit at Quantico. This idea of profiling, that they interview enough serial killers, career criminals, psychopaths that they can build. Well, okay, this is in 1980. They build a profile of a neo-Luddite academic who's very intelligent. They nailed it. They
Yep.
nailed the profile. 1983, which is 12 years before this all ends, they scrap it and say it's a blue-collar airplane mechanic. Shame on you, FBI. Ridiculous. It reminds me of the Jack the Ripper profiles. Depending on where
Yeah.
the wind is blowing, and if too many people go, it can't be a higher education research university. Like, stop saying that. It's got to be, right, the Polish butcher who was hacking up these women and just happened to, right, with the Jack the Ripper analogy. So
Well,
I say shame. There's something that stinks there, and it stinks of
I think, and
classism.
that's
Go ahead.
where I think like the paths, like with what King was talking about, and like that, for me, I was wondering about those things because there's always been that there was he spun, was he ramped up these things, and you could make the case if he was intentionally spun, was intentionally being pushed to do this, then it would make sense all like X Files and stuff where you'd have the cancer man, you'd have somebody derailing the
Mhm.
Director Skinner. You'd have somebody
Right on.
derailing the investigation just
Mhm.
because you're being told by the higher powers you need to leave this alone.
And it
You know.
could be. Yeah, Joe asks, was there political tension within the FBI regarding the BSU at Quantico? Louis Freeh was in charge of the FBI at the time. And Craig and I discussed Louis Freeh a little with some of
Hmm.
these other things. A very not complimentary record. A lot of senior agents had left. John Douglas, I think, stuck it out. But he went off to write books not too long after this. So John Douglas might have been part of the exodus. So the FBI was a mess at this time, further complicating the thesis that maybe it was all being controlled and played by somebody else. They spent $50 million over the course of 17 years trying to catch this guy, and it wound up being his brother. that outed him. So Kaczynski, being a genius, starts to play games. On some of the pipe bombs, like what Craig showed you, he'd put a plate on the end that had the letters FC, which stood for Freedom Club. And I think one of the TV shows, one of the crime procedurals, played with this, with letters and abbreviations and what does it mean?
Yep.
Turns out he had messages from a guy with a couple of initials to another guy. He was messing with them like geniuses do. It becomes a game.
Now, just kind of with that, do you think this is the point where, like with serial killers, where they almost become bored with their activity, and so they throw these things out there to try to build the excitement back up, the thrill of being caught, because like I said, at this point, we're going from, 1978 up till, we're coming up here on that, when he's finally a picture, the one right below my name here, when this picture finally shows up, which is in 1987. So, I mean, we're already going on 10 years that he's been doing this thing, and nobody even knows who he's, they don't have a clue where these things are coming from. And so that's what I think. Do you think he's starting to do this stuff because he's just like, the genius level? It's like, I want to see what I can do, how long it's going to take before these supposed geniuses at the FBI, can start to put these clues together.
It must be he's the FBI's worst, or criminal profiler's worst nightmare, because although his MO and his signature are exact, his attacks are random.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to triangulate his location. That's why I say, as a novelist and someone who's read all John Douglas's books and writes about a fictional division of the FBI, when you start to see those movement patterns, like on any of the TV shows, Fringe, for instance, or X-Files, or any of the crime dramas, Criminal Minds, once they start to see that pattern, once he moved away from Chicago those first couple years, went back home to Montana and was willing to travel or do it through the mail, through different addresses, it had to have been a total nightmare for them. He would put pieces of bark in the bombs. He crafted a bomb all made out of wood. Some profilers and theorists say that he was obsessed with wood, right? Percy Wood was the president of United Airlines because of his deforestation thing. So I think the warped genius, the damage, and possibly the psychic driving were leading him to do these things. He would even use return addresses from professors in similar positions or people in similar occupations. October 8th, 1981, at the University of Utah, it's diffused. Vanderbilt University in May of 1982. This is a comp sci professor. So now he's going after the computer industrial people. A guy named Fisher in Nashville, Tennessee. The bomb is put in a break room, and a secretary, severe hand injuries. So the collateral damage, the one removed. Also in 82, 3 months later. So there's a fixation here, Craig. He was on the airlines for a little. Now he's on the comp sci people. And now in 82, he's targeting UC Berkeley, where he did his graduate, where he taught, but they didn't allow him to do his graduate there. So now it's becoming personal, and he's starting to poop, not in a hole in his cabin, but close to where he ate in the past. Also dangerous. Now, did he target UC Berkeley because, you wouldn't give me a scholarship and that's where I wanted to do my grad? Or everybody was mean to me, my colleagues and my students, when I taught there? Or is it the genius psychopath testing?
Yeah, because I wished, like I said myself, this is one of the things, full disclosure for people. I wish I had a little more time, like on the research on this thing here too, because I wonder if there's some of the people at some of these departments that were involved in that program that were unnamed, and that's because when you see like some of the locations like Berkeley, there seems to be like he's targeting the psychological, because I think that one went to the psychology department. Or was that the one that's coming up? No, that's the next one. That's Michigan.
Labs. These are the comp labs at UC Berkeley.
Yeah. So it's like computer labs, and then you then it just, because then there's just the random one to Boeing.
Yes.
After that.
Yep.
Because it's
Yeah.
one of those, because that's where like the research I was thinking, I'm like, okay, maybe some of these people at Berkeley were involved. Like these were some, like think, Jason Bourne, like they knew some
Mhm.
of these comp science people were in the computer labs while he was being tested on.
Yeah.
But then the Boeing one, and then the only thing I could think of was this guy, were people flown in? Was that why he was targeting airlines? Was it, and it just, trying to put myself in that mind frame, is that why
Right.
he targeted these specific things? Because it seems so random. United
Yeah.
American Airlines, why?
Yeah.
Why just pick these things? Maybe that Murray, maybe he flew in on that airline,
Yeah. These are the
and it
things we
just
don't
in
know.
his mind, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
because he didn't say. That first one at Berkeley at 82 in July, Diogenes Angelicus, which is interesting. Diogenes Angelicus
yeah,
was injured, severe arm and hand injuries. Then Frederick is in laboratory, so a different lab at Berkeley. This is 3 years later, so sometimes the guy went 3 years. What triggered him to pick back up? So King and others, did he get a message? Did they beam something in? Did they fly over his cabin? Did he get something in the mail or a new piece of literature? He took long periods of time off. And with profiling, there's a trigger that gets you back in. Sometimes he took a break. Craig, you talked about the sketch, which we're going to get to very soon. When they got a little close to him, he took some time off. But this is a 3-year break, and yet he goes
mhm.
back to Berkeley like he went back to Northwestern after a full year. It's very complicated stuff. This one, graduate student named John Hauser loses 4 fingers and vision in one eye, a graduate student. Then Boeing, the Boeing fabrication division, serious obsession with airlines,
Yeah.
which, okay, jet fuel, but there were much more pressing issues in technological dangers than airlines.
Yeah, because
So
this
you're
is because it
right.
was the fabricating division. That's what.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, and that's where I was like in my head. It's like, why target that one? I mean, I could see if you were thinking it's like, the tech, you go after the C, you go after something like this, but the
Yeah.
fabrication division. I mean, that's literally the guy in the metal shop, testing out the thing. I mean, so why
Right.
target this person? And then that's where I was kept doing the thing. I wonder if some of these people were, earlier, that somebody that worked there was involved in this thing. And this
Mhm.
is just like this thing. He's got the list of people, and when he figures out where they're at,
Right.
that's when that's why part of the
Right.
delay, maybe because at that time there's no internet. So maybe it just takes a long time for him to do his research, going to the public library, doing all that. And then when he finally figures it out, then he has his target.
Yeah. You and King are making this a lot more sinister than I thought it was. It's
Yeah.
cool. King says he could have a decade of doing multiple attacks in random spots. Seems to me it's impossible to get away unless he's a highly intelligent super genius, which is a big stress. He really was a highly intelligent super genius. He pretty much proved that. If only 10 people in the world could even understand the math that he was working on. But we just don't know. That's why we do these episodes. We just don't know. Scientists have been doing that with lab rats to see what they will do by limiting their food, giving them powers that are godlike compared to other common rats. Yeah, we just don't know because he didn't say. So it's all the big takeaway when we do this show is we're not saying we know anything for sure.
Yeah, because now he's going to target, as you're coming
Yeah,
up. Yeah, because now we go to the University of Michigan where he was,
right.
yeah,
Yeah, 1985, psych professor. So now we got a psychology professor at where he had a not good experience as a graduate student, even though he did master's and PhD there. So interesting to me if he didn't like it, why he didn't transfer out and do his dissertation work someplace else, which people often do. Um, Temporary hearing loss for the psych professor, research assistant, burns, and shrapnel. So now the shrapnel's really starting to come into
hmm
play. Sacramento, California, about 6 months later, now he targets a computer store owner, a guy selling computers, making his
yeah,
living in the food chain of computers, also a little shaky. And this is a nail splinter bomb. This is his first casualty. 200 pieces of shrapnel. This is serious stuff. And to a computer store owner, right, Craig?
Yeah, and that's what I said.
Heck.
That's what I'm curious. Like I said, some of these things, it's one of those. I almost feel like, if I didn't have a regular job, I could like really dive into like these people and, do the whole red strings, figure out their connections. Because I feel like there's something like this computer store owner would be like, he might have been that assistant. He might have been at the school. He might have been somebody involved in the program. It's like, I just, but I didn't have time to dive into these things. But there's also a really good chance that it's completely unrelated. And the guy's just, wacko.
And what did the psychic driving really do to him? And what was it opportunity? They were places he felt comfortable going to, because not all of them were mail bombs. Some of them were hand delivered.
Yeah, because like I said, just a little quick thing was just because for me, like on both sides, like the devil's advocate thing, he really could have just been. It messed him up so much that, like, the rambling guy on the street corner that talks about that the aliens are all around him, like that light post that tells him the secrets to the universe. This really could be this thing, and to him in his mind, as it's all whacked out, these guys are viewed as these threats where he thinks that this is the most evil person in the world, and like I said, it's just a simple guy that's trying to make a living for his family selling computers.
Yeah. And there's the what's the frequency Kenneth guy, and there's people, they're talking to me and they're communicating with me through my fillings and tinfoil hats and all this stuff. Then we find out, because it's declassified, and then the U.S. Air Force takes it off their website, that they've developed this V-skull technology where they can beam stuff in your head. And you and I have both had on our show Solaris Blue Raven, who's very popular.
And she talks about that.
She says that, that this these psychotronic weapons are real. And she says that some of the guys from the progressive rock band Rush were behind her psychic driving. Stephen Greer, who also the jury is kind of out on, he talks about psychotronic weapons. There's the Havana syndrome weapons.
Mm-hmm.
So we just don't know.
Now we're coming into where he screws up.
He does. Cams Inc., Salt Lake City, Utah, hand delivers a bomb February of 1987 outside Gary Wright's computer store. So if you do look at these, Craig, they're really not random. 2 at Northwestern University, then a couple with the airlines. The first one on an airplane, can't do that. It's too random, but I'm going to target the professor. He goes back to that, but he does 2 at Berkeley. So there is sort of a pattern. Then he's got in 85 and 87, takes 2 years off, but he's got 2 computer stores. So there are these fixations that last for 2 years on the idea of, I gotta get a guy in a computer store. So they do the sketch, which Craig has perfectly placed right there.
I know, that worked out great.
That's the more stylized one. The original sketch is a little more boring, but they're basically the same. Forces him to take 6 years off. Must have scared the crap out of him, or is getting too close. Still wasn't getting his thing. He comes back 6 years later, 6.5 years later, University of California, San Francisco. Now he's targeting a geneticist. This makes a lot of sense in the early 90s, because we're talking of genes and clones and these discussions. It's still a little early for that, but some of it's coming up. Yeah, here's the that's the more native one, and then it got dressed up a little bit. Same difference. Let's leave that up for a little bit there. Geneticist Charles Epstein, mail bomb at home, eardrums damage, and loses 3 fingers. Then he moves on. I'm going to move a little quicker here just because of the time. David Galentner, Yale University, so a new target close to Harvard. Craig, is really interesting to me that he never targeted Harvard University.
I know,
especially after the psychic driving.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great point. I mean, it's one of those things. It's I think that's where it falls into the group where, people where they have the other side of it, where he was just crazy.
Yeah.
That it just that the thing messed him up so bad that he is now just the raving lunatic that's just little things and just random people. Like he sees Bob, something like that on an advertising thing, and suddenly that's the devil that must be destroyed.
Right.
And that's where I think it's just one of those, because we've all seen those guys, like whether it's a movie or something like that, where they collect random newspaper clippings, and that's becomes their manifesto. And that's,
Right.
I could definitely see both sides of this, and that's what you said. The fact that he never targeted anybody from Harvard speaks, in a way, speaks volumes, because it's like you'd think that would be ground zero for his attacks. Like anybody in that department somebody would have been targeted.
So, my turn to play devil's advocate. If there was psychic driving and the Harvard program was implanting and directing him, or some government, the CIA, to really test this guy, was it put in the programming that he doesn't attack Harvard University, where they could then go back and maybe uncover the program, or he'd be linked to the program, or just because these guys are bastards? Because these guys are a different kind of psychopath.
Because that's where like the random computer store one would be. That would be done to throw off the trail.
Yeah.
Because you're not targeting the same people. Because then that guy has nothing related to any university. So obviously, it's that's great. Yeah.
So Geltner is computer sci. So now he's really targeting the computer people, right? And I have a couple of just short quotes from his manifesto, which I'll get to in a couple of minutes, because they really speak to where we're at right now. Then North Caldwell, New Jersey. Now he's changing his MO. This is an advertising executive who is rehabbing ExxonMobil's image after the Valdez disaster. There are a lot of people upset with Exxon after the Valdez disaster and how it was handled, what came out about it. This Thomas Moser, his job. So he doesn't target an ExxonMobil exec. He targets an advertising guy trying to rehab their image. Who's the more sinister dude? Maybe the advertising exec. Is this the time in the show, Craig, where I need to go? I'm not advocating violence against any of these people. Maybe I should say that.
Yeah, it's like, nobody's like, but yeah, you can see, because it's always been the who's worse, the criminal or the lawyer that defends the criminal.
Yeah, right.
It's
right.
It's,
and the privileged life of the lawyer, as opposed to the up from rags to riches story of the criminal. Or not from rags to riches, but, in the gutter, and father wasn't there and he was beaten and, got scrappy. So Sacramento, California, April 1995, Gilbert Brent Murray. Oh, Mosser died. Very important. Second death, followed by a third death, 95. Gilbert Brent Murray, timber industry lobbyist. So the last bomb winds up taking him full circle to the possible trigger of the deforestation at the cavern, although we know it's more complex. But I still find that really ironic, Craig, that he finally goes after the timber guy and it winds up being his last one.
Yeah, and it's kind of one of those things. It's like, so we're going through all this process. They've got the picture. It's like, is it because he's in rural Montana, and so nobody really has, this is, in the infancy of the digital age, we don't really have internet, we don't really have so you can't really widely go, but you think the post office would have this sketch. And so the guy he's bringing this stuff in because they get up to this 95, and so that's April 24th. Well, it's less than, I think he's arrested, if I remember, April 3rd. So it's a year later he's arrested,
right?
Up there. So maybe somebody does, but I mean, like they said, like the FBI, they said the big break came when he sent the manifesto because he wanted it published,
right?
And that's where, for me, I always like the reason I always thought like maybe the reason he sent that was just because these idiots cannot figure this out.
I think that was kind of it. Which was probably why the Zodiac, and also Craig too. And we're not psychological profilers, but but we've studied enough of them. Um, Part of them, I think, wants to get caught.
Yeah.
And this kind of bears out a lot, even with Timothy McVeigh a little. Getting in that old car with no license plates and going out on the highway, your chances of getting caught are very, very high. Especially when you're fleeing the sign of a major crime.
Yeah,
right?
because is it the martyrdom thing? Because as you teased in the thing, it's like when it gets to the trial, he's it's like not even. It's like I don't want to jump ahead. I mean, we'll wait to get to that part. Yeah.
No, we're going to get there quickly. The manifesto is called Industrial Society and Its Future. It's 35,000 words. 35,000 words, folks, is substantial. It's quite a few pages. It takes a while to write something like that. It's published on September 19th, 1995. And Craig, I remember when it happened. I was 27 years old. It was published in the Washington Post and the New York Times. Those two bastions of government manipulation, those two spoke pieces of government messages, because unless you do what the government wants, you don't get access to government people. We all know that. And Janet Reno, the devil in the blue dress, as Craig calls her, and Louis Freeh at the FBI, they both approve. Let's do this. Maybe there'll be a clue. Maybe somebody will catch them. And that's exactly what happens. But it's a critique of technology and industrialization, a call to return to a simpler life. Again, echoes of a Randy Weaver. I'm not even going to say a David Koresh because he's got this whole extra thing going on, but a Randy Weaver. A diatribe against extremists on both political spectrums. So a lot of people focus, if you do research on Kaczynski, that he hammered the left, that he hammered LGBT people, and he also hammers right-wing extremist conservatives as well. So if you look at it, he's and who can disagree with that? That there's trouble on both ends. The extremists on both ends are not really helping this country. I would say that they're not trying to help the country. They're trying to help their own cause. Professors and intellectuals said, and I think this is really important, that this was a mostly sane philosophical work. If you call out the calls for revolution, that this was written by a highly intelligent, very sane person who was making a host of salient points. So, guys, listen to these two quotes real quick. Science marches on blindly without regard to the real welfare of the human race. Ding, 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 ding. That goes all the way back to eugenics, my musical about the three Gothic doctors and the dangers of all that stuff. All of these technical advances taken together have created a world in which the average man's fate is no longer in his own hands, ding, 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 but in those of politicians, corporate executives, and remote anonymous technicians and bureaucrats whom he as an individual has no power to influence. That is right on the damn money, Craig. These Silicon Valley CIA funded people that we've been doing shows about. We're going to do Peter Thiel. I'm so excited that people are linking JD Vance and talking about Peter Thiel. That's very exciting to me because we don't have any power over these people, folks. They're not elected. They're not government servants. They're private corporations who have all kinds of protections because they run everything. Craig, and it doesn't sound. Go ahead, sir.
I was going to say I agree. A lot of people mistake. They don't realize that the Republican and Democrat parties are not government entities. Those are private organizations that put forth a candidate. Everybody thinks it's all government. No. These are private run entities.
Yeah, thank you. That's an excellent point. And when he says, but in those politicians, corporate executives, and remote anonymous technicians and bureaucrats whom he as an individual has no power to influence, that is Ike's farewell speech on the military-industrial complex, and it is also Kennedy's speech in 1961 to the National Press Club that I quote all the time, talking about separate nefarious people that no one answers to. This is very much, to me, Craig, and I read it, Max Ponzi's manifesto. and there is so much really good, salient, correct information, but they go too far. And that was a phrase that you used.
Yeah.
Too far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Words.
Yeah.
The thing for me, like as we get into the trial, I just why
Yeah.
did it take almost 2 years?
Yeah.
You just look at this, it's like you think they had a shut thing, and just as we get into it, it's I said, tell me if I'm jumping ahead. He was diagnosed,
We're
they
there.
wanted to diagnose him. They were encouraging him, insanity, plead insanity. And he's like, no,
No.
no, it's like he pled guilty to all the charges.
Yeah.
And I
Wanted to fire his legal team.
Yeah. And so this is the same thing like Timothy McVeigh. It was like, there was no hesitation. It's like, yeah, I'm guilty.
Yeah.
It was like it was like full on. And so it's almost like that. You don't want to use a hero arc. It's that thing where it's just, you've got to have the martyrdom part. You've got to have that part where it's like the action, and as your thing, as you're coming down, you've got to have that self-sacrifice. And this is almost like their self-sacrifice,
Yep.
Kevin Spacey in Seven, detective, admitting that, right there in the lobby. It's just like, they've got to have that self-sacrifice, that martyrdom. Here I am covered in blood, it's like, boom, here I am, I'm guilty. And that's their swan song. It's just, it's.
Yeah. And that's what Maggie, friend of the show here. Well, how do you get recognition if you don't get caught so everyone knows who you are? And there must have been a part of him that wanted to be vindicated, to kind of go, these things are right. King brings up the question of possession, and Tanya and I have thought about a lot about serial killers and possession. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, is the only guy that I ever looked at and went, yeah, that doesn't look like a human being to me. That looks like there could be a demon in his eyes. I think there are a lot of social and cultural factors. Kaczynski was definitely psychic driven for 200 hours. That would be like 10 days straight, folks, while he was at Harvard, just breaking him down. So his brother David, who had fired him from the factory, who had distanced himself from his brother, who was his hero for a long time, but distanced himself, identified the writing style when he read the manifesto, alerted the authorities. He had suspicions that it might be his brother prior, and his wife had pleaded with him to go to the authorities with his suspicions, but it was his brother. And he didn't want to do it in case he was wrong. That's understandable. Here's an interesting thing, Craig. He was supposed to remain anonymous, and somebody leaked it to Dan Rather at CBS, and they outed him. And that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate.
It is, and it's kind of one of those, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one of the questions for me too. It's like, in these things, what culpability do you have? I mean, we'll just say, I'm about to do something. We'll put me in the thing like this. It. You're like, yeah, that's Craig. I've seen that image and stuff, and I do something else. What culpability do you have for not speaking up? And that's where the brother thing is. It's like, if he had done like that bomb that they found, if he had sent that out, doesn't he then bear some of the responsibility for that potential bomb, because he didn't say anything? He knew it. Right. He knew exactly who it was. It's like, crap, that's my brother.
It took him 7 months to come forward.
I know. And that's why. So if that bomb that he was working on had been sent out, I go, realistically, as the FBI, couldn't you arrest him as a co-conspirator at that point? Because you know who it is. You didn't say anything. You don't have spousal privilege. There's no family privilege. I mean, so this thing is just like, you could have stopped it. And so, I mean, he could have been charged. Yeah. I mean, it was great. I mean, and then kind of to what Joseph and King are saying, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people everybody looks, I think it's easy. We all want to have a logical explanation, whether it's the school shootings or something. We want to have something to make it make sense. Sometimes when it just comes to mental disorders and stuff like it, you're never going to have that closure that it makes sense, because there's just the fragility and just the complexity of the human mind is so, there's just, we don't know why somebody snaps.
No.
Why does somebody, like the normal thing, like, just like, we're not getting in that discussion, but like the gun thing, why does somebody, we've got everybody around, like even where you live, there's people all around that have these things. Nobody's doing that. So what makes that one person just snap and just do the stuff? It doesn't make any sense. It's what's that old thing where it's just like you have the same family structure, you have the same parents, you have the same old thing. What makes the one kid do it and the other one's completely normal?
Yeah.
It's you can't say it was how the upbringing, because other kids were completely normal. So why did this one individual snap? And that's the thing is, and Joseph said that you can't apply logic to these situations.
No.
Everybody wants to. You're like, you want to find a reason for it, and sometimes, as horrible it is, there's zero reason for somebody just to go cuckoo.
But there are profiles and there are patterns, and there are brain changes that they found in serial killers, extreme child abuse, mother complex, different kinds of things, all kinds of things. My brother and I were 18 months old. We slept in bunk beds in the same room our entire life. And by the time we were teenagers, our lives were going in such intensely different directions.
Yeah.
Because the things that we were responding to, we were each wired to respond to them in different ways.
Yep.
Just instinctually. I said, I'm going to do XYZ because that's how I'm going to solve this. And my brother said, I'm going to do, WST because that's how I'm going to solve it. And we both came around after years and years to being close, but we took very, very different paths. Neither one of them, one looked healthier to society than the other, but they weren't. Yep. When you really know what each of us went through, neither was better off.
No, and it's like if something happened, like I said, when you boil it down to stuff, you're like, same parents, same house, same food. It's not like one child was tortured over another one. It's just that's and what Maria said, that would, that is the case. It's like that's the hard part on that thing. It's like, do you charge them? Do you not charge them? It's one of those things, because then you make other people where it's just like, if I'm going to get charged, you make sure that you don't say anything.
Right. Also, too, when did it happen on the timeline? Like, you don't know what you know until you're pretty sure that you know it, and it still would have been speculation. So if he didn't go, I'm 100% sure because this is a word that only my brother used because he invented it, right?
Yeah.
It's a portmanteau. It's a made-up word that my brother made up, so I know it's him. There's that. A little sideways, but not really. They did hold the parents culpable of that Michigan shooter because they didn't come forward about their son making threats and, his obsession with their gun.
I know, because that's one of the things. It kind of mirrors perfectly on that one. I agree with you, because it's one of those things when you have that in that case, it's like, at what point are we culpable for another individual's actions? I mean, you're a parent. I'm a parent. My son's 16.
Yeah.
So at what point there's people that want to make 16-year-olds able to vote, do that stuff out here. So at that point, like if he does something crazy, where does the line end where I don't have responsibility over somebody else's actions?
Yeah.
Because it's like, I can do all these things, but if they snap, it's like, it wasn't like I was in their ear saying, here's what I want you to do. Here's my manifesto, giving them directions. But because, a lot of people, you're busy working, you're doing stuff, you're not involved in these people's lives. And so, I mean, it's a great discussion. I mean, I said, it's one of those, you do definitely, I mean, because that's, this is, I mean, it's not a nice one either way.
No, that's why we do this, because it's complicated and it's sinister on a lot of levels. Let's be honest. We've all had teenage kids, and when they close that door at night, we don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. He said, it's not, you want to give them space, but at the same time, it's like, is it my job to go through his phone, everything, and make sure I check every single message that he ever messaged? I go, that's the thing. I mean, eventually I've done my job is to try to make him an adult and then go on to stuff. And at some point, you've got to let people make their own decisions. But at a point, where do you hold me responsible if he makes the wrong decision? I go, I didn't make that choice.
Right.
So where is my? It's like I said. So is his parents, culpable for what he did because he made the choice?
Yeah. He told
like I
his
said,
dad he was taking the gun to the gun range.
yeah, he wasn't, and like I said, most, millions of people do that all the time, and nobody.
Yeah.
So, but why did this one guy go?
Yeah.
That's where Ted Kaczynski. Why did he snap?
Yeah.
We know MK Ultra experiments. I mean, we know that's what really started the fraying of the mind. Yeah, clear browser history. Yeah,
We've all
except
been through that one.
the finger,
We've all
the
been through
fingerprints
that.
still remain.
Yeah, that's right. Sometimes we find out more than we want to know and say, if you had only done X. So he's captured April 3rd in the cabin. January 9th, 18 wants to dismiss his lawyers for insanity angle. His request is refused. He had picked out another lawyer and he tried to kill himself. So he's very committed to seeing this through in the way they need to see it through. So January 22nd, 1998, he pleads guilty to all. Life plus, that's got to be a typo. It had to be 2 weeks later in 88. He pleaded guilty to all of the charges and he was sentenced to life plus 30 with no chance of parole. As I said, some thought he was the Zodiac or involved in the Chicago Tylenol case in 82. So now that they got the guy, they wanted to lay over and go, oh, maybe we got a guy that did X, Y, Z. Two quick data points that are very interesting and bring us back around. He was sentenced to a place called ADX Florence in Colorado, which is a supermax prison. So if you've seen like Face Off or things like that, you know what a supermax prison is. And while he was in prison, he befriended Ramzi Youssef and Timothy McVeigh, 1983 World Trade Center, 1995 Oklahoma City. So Craig, it comes full circle. These guys were all chatting.
You think that those would be, this is like the bombing, dream team. So you'd think that they wouldn't let those people get anywhere near each other.
That was my feeling because Timothy McVeigh, it was very controlled who he could talk to.
Yeah.
And I don't think Ramzi Youssef, especially being a foreigner. I was very surprised that Supermax guys are befriending
you said that. That's
other.
why I also think that there was something else behind like Timothy, because it's almost like they wanted him to get shot. Because remember the picture, no bulletproof vest. Nichols had the armor, because they were worried like he's going to get taken. He's going to get somebody's going to make sure he doesn't talk. Timothy McVeigh, they said same thing. Ted Kaczynski, these guys were like, hey, if somebody takes him out, all right, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. He was transferred to North Carolina in 2021, and he died June 10th, 2023. So a little more
hung
than
himself
a month ago
with a shoestring.
He was 81 years old. Yeah, suicide, late stage cancer. And his father in 1990 had late stage lung cancer and shot himself in the head. So it's also a strange parallel.
Yeah, and so it's like they pretty much, he was pronounced dead, at 8 o'clock the following, that following morning, because he was discovered at 12:23 a.m. So it's like, he was. They auctioned off. They tried to auction off all the stuff for rest, to give money back to the victims and stuff. I mean, I think it raised $232,000 from his stuff, and they actually in the FBI. They have kind of a museum that they've set up in DC, and they've got the cabin there. There's nothing else in it. It's just the cabin sitting there that you can actually go and see. If you're so inclined, if you're one of those macabre people, you can go up and try to touch the cabin.
This is an interesting thing. Maybe it
like
should have been like
van.
Like Shirley Jackson's. Maybe it should have been burned to the ground and the ground sown with salt. It's an odd thing. It's an odd thing.
It's one of those things too, but it's at the same time, you want stuff like this to remain because you don't want, because then it shows people, it's like history. You want to know your history, so you don't repeat it, and that's
right.
Yeah,
it's a good point. Hey, if every show we do is like this, I love it because unexpected things came out and the audience truly participates, which I absolutely love. And we're
Clicky
gonna
clicky
keep
those
on doing
like
this.
things, emojis. People help us with the emojis. People help us with the algorithm because it puts
Right on.
puts the show out there. I mean,
We're
like I
doing
said, if
good.
everybody that's watching just takes a quick second and just hits
Yeah.
it's either the love, the smile, the laugh, not the anger one, but
Yeah.
it's just do all those ones. But if you just do those things, it seems silly, and it's going to take you 1 second to just go click, 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 click,
That's
click. So
right.
that's all you got to do.
That's right. So subscriptions are creeping up, views are creeping up. We're doing our thing. We're going in the right direction. See new faces, get new comments. So that's all good. Yeah, the Zach Baggins Museum. Oy, 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 don't get me started on Zach Baggins. Gotta
The
behave
music,
myself.
yeah.
Where's the thing to click? So Joe, you're on Facebook, so you can like or
Yep.
love it on Facebook, and yeah,
Yeah,
that's all.
just right there where it says, right to the bottom left corner. Just hover over that with your mouse or finger, and you can
He's
just do like,
teasing
love,
us.
care.
Yeah, they
Yep.
he's teasing us. He knows.
All right.
All right, so
We'll do it.
everybody, we're gonna send you out into the night, and in 2 weeks, I'm gonna be. This is one of those ones, and I don't. Craig comes to me with stuff that I know nothing about, and I treasure that. So the Bundy standoffs, I don't know, but I'm sure gonna learn as much as I can in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
And then we're going to come back with the Las Vegas shooting. We're going to cover Project 2025. We're going to do a show on Teal in the Silicon Valley CIA hedge fund connection Q Intel. And we're going to keep watching the circus. Craig, I have kind of stepped away from the news because this quartet is eating each other alive.
Yeah.
And it's sad to watch because this country has real problems. And who said it? Michael Douglas says it in The American President. It's Sorkin piece, Aaron Sorkin piece. And Richard Dreyfuss is one of these guys, like a lot of these guys. He's kind of a Donald Trump, actually. And Michael Douglas looks at him at the debate and he says, "We have serious problems, Bob, and we need serious people to solve them." And Craig, we got a real dearth of serious people.
Yeah. No, it is. I've said many times, like, when we're doing Three Beards podcast and all that stuff too, it's just if everybody just takes a step back, because right now everybody's at each other's throats. Like, how dare you like the Orange Man? How do you like him? It's like, here's the thing. If you realize that means nothing, I mean, it's just, you need to look, it's more important to look locally and to focus on that stuff, because that's, focus on your school board, making sure that those, do these things, because if there's anything that people can't, I don't know why people can't get this through their head. These are not random people that show up.
No.
Come on. The four
not
that are there. Level. Yeah, the four that are there were not there because they were the best, they just rose from the, so no, these are people that are put there for a reason. And so it's just better if people step away, stop watching the news like it's a religion.
Yeah.
I'm telling everybody right now, if you actually turn your news off right now for the next week, you are going to feel so much better, because it's like I said, it's done. If it bleeds, it leads. I mean, that's the reason why it's there, is to keep in. If you watch it, you're going to depress yourself. You're going to get anxious. You're going to get, there's no reason to hate your neighbor. There's no, it's, especially over somebody who's part of another political party. I mean, I don't care who you're a sport of. That's just one of those. Yeah, it's just, you got to step away. You got to, because it's just, you realize it's done. It's division is intentional. They want you to hate. They want you to hate the Orange Man. They want you to hate. They want it to like there, because while you're doing that, you're not paying attention to what they're actually really doing.
Right. 1960s, at the height of the civil rights movement, COINTELPRO, counterintelligence operation run out of the FBI, Edgar Hoover. You infiltrate and you get the people to eat themselves alive. Yep. And that's what this is. It's the division.
That's what we're doing. I mean, look at how many people. It's like, if you came on and said, even right now, I'm for Robert Kennedy Jr., people will tear you to shreds.
Yeah.
It's bad. It's bad. It's bad. Step away. Joseph said it right.
Yeah, Joe says right, and it changed me being away.
Well,
Craig, I sent the word out to some of our colleagues. I'm just not engaging with this stuff. I don't look after my family, and I gotta. Yeah.
Yeah, and you realize it's actually freeing when people do it. You'll realize you'll have so much less stress.
Absolutely.
So between now and when we have the show in 2 weeks, I want people to try that. Turn the news off for a little while and see what happens. I promise you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the world's not going to come to an end.
No, and I'll say this too. The algorithms are so fine-tuned anymore. Like TikTok, your algorithm will slip. If you go sideways just a little and go, oh, that looks interesting, and it's something you've never engaged with before, the algorithm will change so quickly. So try to find
a dog video, find a cat video, start watching those.
Yeah. 1980s hairband videos, man.
That's right.
White Snake.
Yes.
There you go. Watch
who doesn't like a group where the guy names it after his own member? Come on.
Watch Connie Catane shake her butt on the roof of White Snake's car, right? All right, there we go. Thank you all. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Well, I'll see you next week if you want to tune in. I'm doing 1947, Maury Island, Mount Rainier, Kenneth Arnold, Roswell, and all the changes in the government that happened within 2-3 months of, and watch us on, or listen to us on Earth Radio.
Radio.
Wednesday nights at 10 p.m. EST. Peace, everyone.